Welcome, everyone. Hi, it's Angela Lovezarenka with Lactation Education Resources, and I have the great privilege and honor of introducing Nikki Killings and Nikki Hunter Greenaway for today's talk on documentation. Please take it away.
Woo-woo. Hi. Thank
Hey.
you all for being here today. Listen, we'll say from the top, we know you had a lot of options for where to be today. There was a
Yes.
lot going on in lactation land. And if you're catching the repeat, if you're catching the replay someplace else, either in LER or YouTube, we appreciate you tuning in to catch this talk later. I am Nikki Killings. I am Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging for LER, who are a gracious host. Thank you for having us, LER. And I'm a perinatal equity strategist, private practice lactation consultant, and many, many things in these lactation streets. One I'm very proud of is being a co-good troublemaker with my partner here, who will introduce herself.
Hey, everyone. My name is Nikki Hunter Greenaway. I'm also known as Nurse Nikki. I'm a board certified family nurse practitioner and that specializes in perinatal health. And I am a IBCOC housed in today in New Orleans, Louisiana. Yeah, I'm out here doing the work, doing the work. So we appreciate y'all. Yeah, as Nikki said, y'all had a lot of options today. And if you're joining us live, we appreciate you. If you have to dip in 15 and if you're toggling between, hey, we appreciate you. And if you're catching the repeat, we still appreciate you because we realize there's some really good stuff going on today. And we hope that we can give you some gems that made it all worth it. So thank you for coming.
Indeed. As is the case every single time we come before you, we start with a check-in. We'll tell you how we're doing, but we want to know how you are doing out there as well. And tell us where you are. Tell us anything you want us to cover today to make sure that we answer all your burning questions before the end of this call. Nikki, you want to start with how you're doing?
Okay, so guys, we said this a while back that we weren't going to talk about COVID anymore, but we're going to talk about COVID. We're going to talk about Delta. Okay, I don't know her. I don't know that person, but they are wreaking havoc all over my city. Our numbers have gone up 900%. We are now
900%.
900%. We are in the top 5 for COVID in the country again. It went 900%. We got that data on Monday. So yeah, folks are cracking down. I haven't been able to do clinic at the shelter because it's so much COVID and I just can't be in quarantine this week. I just can't. Yeah, people have put mask mandates back in place. While it's not a statewide or a citywide thing, a lot of businesses have said, no, you need to mask up, get back on your protocols. We had laxed because we had gotten things pretty under control. But yeah, it's a little scary right now. And we were hoping that we were, in a good spot where we can start being a little lax and start, getting back to a sense of normalcy as far as socialization goes. But we need to still be cautious. So I'm a little anxious this week, but thankful that I have a place where I can quarantine or, be safe and things like that. Because as I know, a lot of my clients may not have that.
It's true. We laughed as we were thinking through all the topics we'll be bringing to you all for the rest of the year. And we said, we said no more COVID, but it seems inevitable, right? We've got to talk through it a little bit more. So I think there'll be at least one more COVID talk this year, depending upon what the needs are out there. But it's disappointing. It's disappointing to be more than a year in, and to have thought that by this point we'd be sort of on the other side of it, to now kind of be starting over with a much more virulent variant.
Oh,
Nice.
oh, nice.
Sorry. I got elementary and middle schoolers. We get very, very excited about, can't even think of what the term is now when first letters are the same. But anyway, that was a good one. Anyway, yeah, we couldn't have guessed. Maybe we could have, because we could see how our own cities and states were responding to the first round. We probably could have guessed that it would be back, or we'd be facing another peak, but I thought it would have been around cold and flu season. I did not think it would be now, so soon. And here we are. So in that context, we're doing okay. But in Florida, it's not unlike Louisiana in that we citizens have a hard time taking it seriously, and so masking is hit or miss. Vaccination's been hit or miss, and that makes it very difficult for folks who serve vulnerable populations like infants and newly birthing people. It makes it very difficult for us to do our job and to do it effectively. In order to feel safe going back into homes, we had to get to a certain place, and now it feels like we're going backward on that. So not loving this place that we're in. And my kids thought, yeah, it's time to get back out and do sports and all the normal things, and now we're reeling it back in, like, not so soon. Not so soon. So that's how we are. How are y'all doing? What are you experiencing? And any questions on documentation that you want us to start with? Angela? And where is everyone from today?
Yeah, where are y'all from? Because it really does vary as far as documentation and any rules that you have, because we have HIPAA and some people have the other one that I can't think of right now that starts with a P, that I looked at just last night. But yeah, tell us where you're from and any questions that you have, because we have some stuff for y'all.
Angela, what are we hearing out there?
So we're seeing that we have people here from Florida, Louisiana. We've got North Carolina.
Yay.
I see here Iowa, California, Philly, Puerto
Nice.
Rico, Pennsylvania, California,
Love it.
Michigan. Ooh, Ontario saying hello. Fayetteville, North Carolina, someone just working on their lunch.
Ooh, thanks for
Washington
spending your lunch with us.
Yes.
We've got Texas, Ohio, New Zealand, 5:30
Oh my.
in the morning.
Oh
You
my
win.
Whoa.
You win.
goodness. You win.
Send that person a ribbon. That is fantastic.
That's wonderful.
I love that. Oh, all right. Well, we're happy y'all are here. Please make sure you notate in
And
the chat. Oh,
Germany. We got Germany and Vancouver Island, Canada. So,
Oh,
yay. Thank you all.
yay.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. We hope that you find this to be a warm and inviting space where you can share your thoughts and ask any questions. We've been doing this for a long time now, Nikki, over about a year and a half, I guess.
Yeah.
I guess we've been at it. So we're real comfortable here, right? Our shoes are off. We let our
Yes,
hair
they are.
down.
I mean, y'all are in my bedroom. You understand? Like, you're in my house.
No underwires allowed in this room, by the way.
Please.
So you all, welcome. Thank you for spending time with us. Nikki, I think we should start with, what does IBLC say about
Yes,
documentation?
I agree. So we're gonna pop something in the chat for you. And if you see us looking off, it's us just toggling our screens and making sure that we're, telling you the goods. But
Yeah.
so IBLC does have documentation guidelines, and sometimes I understand that some folks don't realize that. They're like, well, and please put in the chat what you're doing now. Like, is this something where you're like, oh, I didn't know that I was supposed to document, or I've been doing it, and tell us what your practices are now. But IBLC did put out a statement. It was approved in March 20th of 2010, and it was updated in 2012. So it's a little old. It's about,
Spin around.
but the basics are still there. So they said that IBLC defines clinical documentation as the written, typed, or electronic record of information about a client or client group which details the care provided. Client health records may be paper, or electronic, such as electronic records, faxes, emails, audio or video recordings, as well as pictures and diagrams. The record communicates observations, assessments, the plan, and interventions, evaluations, outcome, and follow-up. Documentation has the potential to be admitted into legal proceedings, okay? So for all my healthcare providers out there, your nurse, anyone in the health industry, you may have been told this. I know that I was told this in nursing school. If you didn't write it down, you didn't do it. It is your word against the client's word. And the only thing that can really hold up in court is if you wrote it down, if you have documentation. It's a receipt. It's a receipt of your visit, right? So you have to have your receipt to return anything or to prove things, right? So that's important. And so the underpinning principles of this, of the guideline is you want accurate, clear, comprehensive, and concise. Okay, we don't want paragraphs, y'all. We're not writing a thesis on this person's birth.
That part is
Can't
so
miss that.
important because nobody reads
Yes.
nowadays anyway. So if
No.
you write
Mm-mm.
several pages, they're not going to read it. So you have to be to the point. Sorry.
Right.
Continue.
Right. Documented by the clinician. So the person that provided the care. That's the thing. Okay, as we have, now if you have you're mentoring someone and things like that, as long as they're there and they're, maybe scribing for you or transcribing, make sure that they're putting exactly what you have told them to put, okay? Dated, timed, and signed. A lot of us, I'm guilty of this, have charts that are open. It is not legal if it is not signed and closed, okay? You can't have all your charts just floating out there and they are open. And this is for whether you're doing electronic or written. It has to be signed and dated at the bottom, and timed, they said, but for sure it's signed and dated. Legible and permanent, meaning, permanent means, layman terms, you cannot chart in pencil. No, you cannot. It is not, pencil
Yeah.
does not make it legally binding. Pen does. Acceptable abbreviations to the organizational legal requirements and include maintained confidentiality. It's confidential. You have to keep that record secure because it has identifying information. This is now a health record. As much as we don't want to be like clinical folks and really like dive into like the medicine of it all, this is still a health record. It still may have a picture of some breasts on it. It still may have some information that they don't want getting out, okay? And only corrections of your mistakes may be used by using acceptable technique and manner. This being said, you cannot use whiteout. You can't. I'm a stickler for whiteout, and I don't even allow it in my house because you need to put one line and put your initials, and then
Yes.
put the corrected information. So that is the basis of what Ilse said. I want to hear what y'all have to say about it, but Nikisha, what is your take?
Yeah, no, these are the basics, right? So while I was reading through this, it was really interesting, especially when you read about all the various formats it could be in, which, as you said, could be paper. Many of us have no paper record keeping anymore. And then it even says electronic records, including faxes, which I thought was really compelling. I haven't used a fax in a couple of years, but I know some doctors' offices still require or still use fax as their main mode of transmitting information. And so it's really important to make sure that you're doing what makes sense for you and your practice. But yeah, these are the basics. And then from there, you can expand, you can go deeper, you can employ other levels of security. I know Liz Brooks talks a lot about when everyone was starting to switch to mobile, pre-COVID, some time ago, when people were starting to go to mobile record keep or electronic record keeping or seeing folks via telehealth. She had some very clear guidance for the field about you still have to make sure any of those documents that you take are locked away, locked and sealed, whether they're electronic or paper. If they're paper, they have to be in a file cabinet that's not like out in your living room so your kids can thumb through it and see all the details of Jane Smith's interaction with you. It has to be locked away securely and away from the rest of the house if you're doing business out of home. So lots and lots of ways to make sure that we're maintaining protocol and being very careful and meticulous about our record keeping and how to make sure those documents are safe and secure. But I'm getting into the weeds. Again, these are LLC's guidelines. If you are an IBCLC or working toward IBCLC, it's important that you know this document very well. And it is available, I think, in the chat. Yes, we've shared it with you. Take a look at it, go through it. I promise you, many of us doing this work have not seen this or have not seen this since 2012 when it was first published. So you have the opportunity to be ahead of a lot of the field by just familiarizing yourself with this document today.
Absolutely. So we have a lot of questions, so we want to make sure that we get to as many as possible. So there's the first question is, for those who work in a hospital setting that offer free support groups, do you document anything for the moms who drop in during support group, or only those who you help individually outside of support group setting? So we had this come up in our own support group that we do here in New Orleans, and it, from what I understand, okay, is if you are providing support, just support, if it's a peer group, then there's no documentation needed. You can have like a sign-in sheet as far as folks that you contact on a regular and send out reminders and stuff. But as far as documentation, there is none needed because it is a support group. And just like any support group, this is very closed. It's a closed kind of situation. We don't want people's information getting out. And we also state, like, if anything you hear about someone else's personal thing, that you keep here in the group, right? But if then you are offering, I would say on that individual basis of, someone comes to you from the support group, and you can also say during the group, one of the things that we say, because we do have IBCLTs that work in the support group, hey, it sounds like you have a more specific problem. You want to meet with me separately, and then we can go over it. Then you need to document, because now you're working in a different capacity. You're trying to solve a problem that they have, and it's a problem focused visit as opposed to a support focused situation. That is my take on it, and that's kind of how I have to approach it as a provider. Because remember, a lot of times if you're working in a provider as a provider, or if you're working as a peer, you have to figure out which hat you're wearing, because you are, like we said last time, you are governed or held accountable by the highest level of your credential, whatever credential, your highest credential. As myself, in working with this person, I then, as a nurse practitioner, have to follow up with them because I help them with a problem. Okay?
That's
That answers
true.
the person's question.
Sorry, I am trying to see the questions. I'm not receiving them. Something's going on with my line today. So Nikki, you'll have to read them. I'm not able to see any
Okay.
questions that are coming in.
No problem. So stating to work on a new system or process, attempting to organize it so that the 4 LCs who work with the charts communicate effectively and quickly with one another. That is key, because I have 3 nurses that work with me, and we want to make sure that everyone is seeing the documentation. So, and we also want to make sure that we know who documented it. So at the beginning, we were like, oh, well, we just need, as a provider, I have my own, and then we can have like a general one for everybody else, and that person sign it. No, that's not gonna work. That's not legal. Don't do that. Everyone needs their own login, but you want to have a comprehensive system that is available to everyone. Everyone has access to it, but it's also, fit your budget and your needs and all that kind of stuff. So our friend Annie Frisbee, the documentation extraordinaire, she has a tip sheet, and she compares the different platforms, and it's very, very helpful. So we'll pop that into the chat, and you can see what suits and fits your needs, because they're all different, but some of the components are the same. Some of the platforms she talks about aren't lactation specific, but if you do things outside of lactation, you may want something that's a little bit more robust. But think about that. You have to create templates, and you have to make it specific for your space.
Yes, yes. This one is called, oh, you see it already, choosing the lactation platform that works for your lactation practice. I think it's a really, really great tool to go through, because all of our needs are going to be really unique to the audience that we're serving and where we're located and what tools are available to them. So absolutely. Thank you guys for meeting me in my tech difficulties I'm having today.
No, it's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Nikki.
No, I was going to say one of the platforms that is not mentioned on there is a newer platform. It's called Mahmee, Mahmee. And I would say it's very lactation friendly. One of the unique things that I like about this platform is that it sends, and it's free. They have a free version of it that is very robust, actually. It sends based on the gestation of the parent or how many weeks postpartum they are. It sends them information based on that, like support group information and things like that. And it's sent straight to their text or email. And then it has a pretty cool, it's very patient friendly as far as registration and things like that. If you are a healthcare provider, you cannot bill from this thing. It's more of a, if you're providing care to someone and you don't need to bill and they don't need a medical record number, it doesn't have that functionality, but it does have the thing of if you need to chart about a visit and things like that. It is very helpful for that. And it's called Mommy, MAHMEE.
I really love that tool. I've used it quite a few times myself. One of the reasons why it's really neat is because it allows you as a practitioner to talk with the rest of the healthcare team. It allows the parent to upload their own information and to be involved. They can see your notes. They can refer back to them. It's a really cool portal. To house all the information about interaction, both from the clinician's perspective and from the patient's perspective.
Yeah.
And you all can, there's even video technology involved where you can meet up, have support groups and or one-on-one groups, one-on-one consultation in there. But the most important thing is the charting, is the level of information you're able to include. As Nikki said, not necessarily for billing, but for record keeping, it can be a really good tool.
Yep.
So
I just wanted
don't
to
leave
add that
mommy
one
out.
on there.
Yeah.
There's another question. Are the documentation requirements the same for a CVS and an IBCLC? Uh, yes. Especially, so I would say this, depending on your credential that you have, whether it's a CVS or a CLC, you also want to take note of what they require as well, because these are credentialing folks. They've given you this title. So I'm sure there's something else that goes along with that. So for the CVS, yes, it is the same. And usually they hold you to that IBCLC guideline because a lot of folks move from that credential to the IBCLC. So you should have that, IBCLC principle that you're already doing.
Yeah, I think these are great principles to incorporate into your work, no matter what your field or what your level of clinical certification is. It's important to make sure that you are documenting for all the reasons we've shared, but also the CYA aspect. It's, as Nikki said, when it comes down to it, it's going to be your word against this client, and it could be years after the fact that something comes back up, and you want to be able to refer back to your documents and say, oh, I didn't say that. I didn't advise that, or this is in fact what I said. And then it's based upon, it could be based upon the person's interpretation and how they choose to take your advice, but you can at least have documentation of how you assessed the situation and what it was you advised the family to do based on the information you had in that moment. And that could be the difference between a simple resolution or a very complicated resolution to an issue down the road.
Yes.
I think
I
I'm
agree.
back.
You back?
Oh,
Okay.
whew, I'm back.
So we had another question of, and this is just a general question, what is preferred from others? Chart directly in your system during the consult or take notes and go back and chart? Trying to find that balance that keeps me from charting from home. Okay, this is my struggle. I'm gonna put this out here right now. I do not like charting. Everyone in my team knows I don't like charting. I'm usually the last person to chart. I'm that person. This is my notebook. This is my notebook here. And I take this with me on visits. I already know my intake because it's ingrained in my head because I've been doing this for so long. And I have a page for every patient and I put it in there. We do follow-up and care plans via email and stuff like that. So we're trying to cut down on paper and amount of paper. Parents have a lot of paper. They do, but they always have their phone in their hand. So we rely on that, but I am the worst. And I really like to look, because I'm a mouth reader also. So I like to look at their face and I cannot type while doing that. And I personally cannot do that. And I find it distracting to have just a whole lot of extra stuff. So my preference is not. That does mean that I have to do this at home. Or as Annie Frisbee will say, have some time that you are not doing it, right? That you set aside every week. So Fridays are my days where I sit down, I do billing stuff and I do charting. And I have to sit and have that admin time. You always need to have some admin time built in, and that's usually for your charting and just to send out referrals and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's really great information. I had a thought. Hold on, I lost it while you're talking because I was agreeing with you and going with you down that path. I think there's a bit of an art to engaging with the parent while also documenting what is happening, and it takes some practice. For me, it took a few years to be able to gather all the information I wanted in the consult. Now I know to get as much as I can before the consult,
Yes.
so that I can really just engage with them in person as much as possible. But there's going to be some things you want to jot down that you're noticing in the moment, that you want to get down before you lose it. And I am very much into paper documentation in that way. I don't, for me to, get to the right page of the app and type it in would be much more difficult for me, when I can just jot down my notes in that way. And so find the process that works best for you to still remain fully engaged, or as engaged as you can, in the conversation with the parent, because they know when you're distracted, when you're flipping around, when you're trying to, oh shoot, what tab was that?
Right. Right.
You're trying to figure out how to get this information down, and you're losing them. You're losing them as you lost eye contact, baby's starting to wail, and you're trying to tell me again, what was date of birth? Some of that stuff can wait. For equity purposes, I've got to note there's probably some things that you're asking on your documentation forms that aren't necessary. So I always recommend folks go back through and see, do we really need to know the gender of the baby, sex of the baby? Is it necessary for your assessment? Do you need to know the what the partner does? I used to have like a mother and father sections in some of my forms, and why is that a thing? We could talk about the parents in general and what their roles are, and how they're each going to support the feeding of the infant, and notate those things. But some other pieces may not in fact be important at all to document. And so I definitely recommend, if you're creating your own documentation forms, if you're doing paper, make sure that the information you're gathering is important and relevant, so you can cut down on the questions that you're asking, but also so that you are working to be inclusive in your conversation, in the way that you are engaging with the family. And making certain assumptions about their family dynamic may be the thing that loses their confidence or trust in the middle of an interaction. And all that's a part of how you're documenting what took place in the discussion. All right. Ooh, we got lots of questions. Okay.
We do. We do. I do want to take a moment to say that if y'all could put your questions in the question box and not in the chat box, that would be really helpful, as LER pulls out the questions for us and sends them to us. So put your questions in the question box. Thanks. Platforms for inpatient and outpatient. Ooh, that's a good one. So you're actually using a pretty robust platform. This person says that they're using Epic in the hospital, and it does have its limitations. You may have to have like I know some lactation consultants that have a template or things like that, and they have like a Google Doc or something, and then they cut and paste things over as things that they need to say, right? Or things that they need to remember, because it can really basic when we have those hospital portals. So there isn't really, I don't know of one that is hospital based, and all the platforms that we're speaking of today are community based more, and are outpatient portals, because in inpatient they just need, first of all, tons more security. And they do need a little bit more information in that space. It's usually connected to the birth record or their primary care records. So
I would agree. Just on the point I made earlier about engaging and trying to spend as little time as possible on documenting, I've dropped another link into our chat. Great admin folks here. If you can help share that out, it's 5 strategies to spend less time on charting during a lactation visit. That's another Annie Frisbee paperless lactation gold nugget. So y'all, we're giving you all the gems today.
Mhm.
Let's see.
Mhm. Yes.
LER's got some gems too. Let's not leave LER out.
Yes. Yes. We have those too, and we can pop them in the chat. They have protocols also that they've created, and they're updating them literally as we speak. They're updating the protocols, and they have a course as well that has some handouts and stuff that you can get and help you with your documentation. So as always, they got your back. Someone looking for the basics in anything. Did I miss one? Okay. Someone looking for the basics in any setting. I mean, you could always create your own. So if you look at Annie Frisbee's document about the different various platforms and comparing them, there's a platform that we're all very familiar with, G Suite. And you can get a BAA agreement with them, which protects your information and it makes it kind of HIPAA compliant, where it's protected in that way. You can always use that and save stuff in there, and you can create your own forms. I created my own forms all the time, and because I know what I need as the unicorn that I am, a nurse practitioner, IBCOC, working with homeless population. So I need some questions in there that aren't on anybody else's form a lot of times. So I've created my own. And some of the basic things that you can put in there is the latch assessment tool that someone asked about. What do I assess? So you want to get, basic information, date of birth, things like that. You want to get a good, a basic medical history of the parent, the breastfeeding parent, because having hypertension, if they were on MAG, if they, all these things, like if they were induced, those are questions that can kind of affect breastfeeding. If they had diabetes, if they had a thyroid disorder, like those can affect breastfeeding. So we want to know about if they've had breast surgery. A lot of people forget to ask about that. Any medications that they're taking.
I made many mistakes early on by neglecting that simple question. Yeah.
Have you had your breast worked on? And different things like that. So asking those basic questions. Asking the social history. A lot of times we don't want to ask the hard questions because we don't know what to do with the answer. But thankfully, you're in the proximity to other health professionals that can help you answer those, find the solutions to those and those problems that they may have. But also, you want to get some information about the baby. How much did they weigh at birth? Weight information. Maybe you don't have a scale with you and you can't bring it, but asking when was their last weight, they may have had a weight this morning. And so it gives you some indicator, okay, they were born this day, this is their weight, and this is their weight now. And then obviously assessing their latch. And there's an assessment tool called the latch assessment tool, and I can pop that in the chat.
Yes, that's a good one. That's fantastic.
Way more technical stuff than what I normally do during this call.
You're doing it though. Great resources. Absolutely. Someone's asking a question about being on the Wi-Fi, your own Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi at the home that you're visiting. I'll ask the question more directly here. It says, if I choose to chart during a visit or for any setting, should I obtain some type of encrypted, secure Wi-Fi? In the past, when I had a nursing job that included home visits, we used a secure hotspot. I am of the ilk that you can never be too careful. And so if possible, if that is within your means, within your ability to do so, absolutely, sure. However, if not, I think it's okay if you're in the family's home and you're discussing their needs, right? Their medical history and such. It's okay to do that on their Wi-Fi in their home. But if we talk about going to public spaces where someone else could infringe upon the Wi-Fi or some of the information that you're exchanging, absolutely, I would take every extra protocol possible to make sure that your lines of communication are completely secure. So within your means. If you're in Starbucks, no. I wouldn't use the Starbucks Wi-Fi for documentation purposes. I wouldn't do that. But I do think that there's ways to do this that are secure and safe and don't necessarily cost you more if it's outside of your means at this time.
Mm-hmm. Sure. I'm now putting in another breastfeeding assessment tool. It is the IBFAT. It's the infant breastfeeding assessment tool, and I will put that in as well.
We're actually giving y'all some great stuff for assessment, which goes beyond documentation. And
Mhm.
so we're talking about different tools that may really be helpful in the situation, but not all of these are always going to be necessary. And so you absolutely
Right.
want to gauge what the issue is. What is the patient presenting with? What have they called you
Hmm.
for? What are their needs? And use only the tools that are necessary or that you
Yes.
see a need to use at the time of assessment. Yeah. But these are absolutely ones I'm gonna make sure I have in my toolkit as well.
What to document? So that answer that question. So these are some of the things that you can document. And we talked about history and all those type of things. HPI, which is history of present illness. What's going on? Why are you there? How long has it been happening? What makes it better? What makes it worse? Um, if I choose to chart during a visit, then we did
Yep,
that.
just did that
Assess
one.
baby systems.
All those assessments.
Assessments can include parents' mood. Assessments can include baby's reflexes in a head to toe in a basic way. What do you suggest for fillable online intake forms? Is Google Forms a good choice? Um, I believe if you have that BAA agreement. Now, here's the thing with that, it does cost some money, but it is not as much as the platforms, right? It's not like 40, $50 a month. With Google, I think it is the Google Workspace. I think it's called Google
Uh,
Work. We went from like G Suite to Google something, but it's Google
I can't keep
Workspace,
up with
and
them.
I know, but it's like maybe $5 to $10 a month. But I would double check that because it has changed in the past year for sure during COVID, that amount of money. But getting that BAA agreement and making sure you complete it and turn it back in, I do think it protects. But another person to ask about that is Annie Friesen.
There really
She
are so
does
many
have a
options out
Facebook
there.
group.
Yeah, she knows what's appropriate, what's secure, and what's not, what's HIPAA
Hmm.
compliant and not. I think that there's so many options out there. We haven't even run down the list of all of them, right? Annie's got a few in her,
Hmm.
or kind of the most used ones in her article. We added mommy. I don't know if Milk Notes was originally in Annie's list or we
Hmm.
added that. There are
No,
so
it's in there.
so isn't there? Okay. There are so many
Hmm.
ones to choose from. We absolutely recommend you go through and take a look, see at all of them. Talk to folks who are using
Yes.
them and see what
Hmm.
makes sense for you. If you're not seeing super complicated cases where you need to have, this very in-depth history and assessment of baby. If you're doing, common issues, latch and positioning mostly, if that's within your wheelhouse as the level of clinician that you are, then some of this stuff won't be necessary in some of these tools, and
Hmm.
it will be a headache for you and the parent to
Hmm.
share all of this, to go through to tick down all these questions before you can get to the helping. So
Right.
explore, try out, talk to folks who are using them, and you know whatever you're using for documentation today, we would love if you would tell us about that in the chat and tell us what you think about it and who it's most appropriate for. We'd love to have first person experiences to share with those who are like, huh, what, where do I go?
Right.
Even beyond what Nikki and I can share.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of these platforms do have Facebook groups. They have Facebook communities of folks that are using the platforms. So you can go in there and they will allow you to join those groups, even as a person that's interested. A lot of these platforms, they will allow you a trial period where you don't pay anything. And, and you can just go in and start using it and see how it best helps your practice. The lactation specific platforms are Milk Notes, they are Mobile Lactation, and it is also Mommy. So those are three lactation specific ones. Other ones you may have to tailor to your needs. And again, you can always create your own, which is in Google. But there's a very long list of things in the article, and I want to see what other people are using. Maybe you're using something different that we hadn't heard of.
Let us know. Or if you've created something that's really met your need and you want to share, we would love to see that. Absolutely. Let's continue the conversation. All right, we're looking, we're checking. I think we're maybe caught up with each other now in our questions, Nikki, finally.
I
I
think
had a
so.
whole situation. Y'all don't even know about the first 15 minutes. I was, in the dark here. Someone loves intake Q. It's a really
I've
popular
heard
one.
it. Yes, I've heard that folks really love it. Super easy and great support, and that is key because when you hit a rut and you're like, why does this form keep doing this? Why did the patient say they never received it? I did all the instructions. Someone that you can call, like a real person that can help navigate you through, you know, getting your needs met is super important.
Yes,
Another thing.
absolutely.
Doxy now, does Doxy offer electronic medical records, or are you using that for video chat? Because I'm familiar with it as far as doing video consults, but are you using it? Does it have a tool where you can chart stuff?
Yeah, that's a new one to me. I've not heard of that one.
I know a lot of folks use it for their video, especially during telehealth, teleconsult, um, and they've become really popular doing that during the pandemic.
Oh, okay. Doxy me. All
Charm.
right.
Charm is great. I love Charm as a platform. I've actually used Charm just because it was free for your first 50, for 50 clients. If you have 50 clients and you don't see a whole lot of folks, Charm is perfect. It has templates already in there because there are tons of lactation folks that use it. So if you type in templates like lactation assessment, one will pop up. There's several to choose from, so you can just add it to your portal. So that's cool.
Yeah. I, for most of my career, seeing clients in home or in the community, have been using my own paper form that I developed. Not on my own. I got it from the voice in the room, Angela Loves Ranka, who shared her documentation many, many moons ago. And then I just adapted it to meet my needs as a budding clinician back in the day, and have adjusted it over the years. I really love my paper one, and it's met my needs. Only in the last COVID times have I tried to try out a couple of electronic ones, which have been great. But Mommy has been the one that I would say I use with any consistency. And so I'm loving hearing about all the others that worked well for those of you who, yeah, who are doing this work. Could people use paper and pencil? Well, according to IBLC's guidelines for IBCLCs, you can absolutely use paper. They don't recommend pencil because it's not permanent to document the interactions with the client. You can write it all down, of course, share copies with the client, of course, store your copies in a secure way, and so that they're referenceable. And then you may need to fax, scan, and email or otherwise to get copies of those to the other practitioners on that person's healthcare team if necessary.
hmm I will say, and I want folks to be cautious, if you're accepting insurance, um, there is a mandate that is going around that you need to have electronic medical records.
That's
And
good
there
to
are
know.
incentives. There are incentives for providers to do so, but if you are accepting insurance, um, I want you to check with your insurance because a lot of times they want electronic medical records. Now, does that mean that you can't take a picture of your thing and put it into some type of chart? Yeah, no, that's you could totally do that if you want to do paper charting and you're like, I can't do that. You scan it into the person's chart. But for insurance, and if you're billing insurance, then they do want electronic medical records in certain spaces. So please check with your insurance provider.
So Dr. Chrono is one that someone has said I guess they've used. It has a free version. A new one
Oh,
for
nice.
me again. All right, let's see. Thank you all for sharing your experiences with those different platforms. That's been very insightful. I learned about a couple new ones as well. I'm going to make sure that we've shared all of our goodies that we wanted to give today,
Oh, yes.
Nikki.
Oh, shoot. Keep closing my screen. I don't know
That's
what
what
I
happens
got
when we have 10 tabs open, trying to share all the things.
to share
Yeah,
all of the gems.
I think that's all the gems I had. Um,
Let me see.
okay, yeah, all right. I got nothing else for that, and we're standing by though to answer any questions from the audience if you have anything else for us. Unless Nikki, if you
Yeah.
got anything else to
Yeah.
share.
No, I think you have to choose what works best for you, but also just being consistent and having a routine of charting. And obviously, your virtual visits will be different. You kind of chart it a little different than your in-person visits. So making sure that you have the proper consent forms that reflect a virtual versus an in-person. And then, or maybe your consent form does include video chat and all that type of stuff, but make sure you're capturing that in your assessment tool, because in your assessment tool or whatever you're documenting, you'll have to note in some way that it is a virtual visit and that you didn't actually weren't in person, and some of the limitations that can happen from being in person. So yeah, and if you have a team of folks making it readily available, so if someone else does follow up, then they can access it. That's a big deal, and that's one thing we're working on with my people.
Indeed, indeed. Someone wants to know if I'll share my forms. Angela may as well share hers. Go to the OG, not the adapted one. But sure, I don't mind it. Um, Yay, thank you. Someone saying this
Oh,
has been helpful. Oh,
oh,
yay.
good, good. We try and give
It's,
y'all the freshest information we have.
excuse
And what
me
you
just a
have.
second.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Someone is saying something here, and instead of typing it, all the intake forms, confidentiality forms, and consent forms just seem like there's so much paper to ask a new parent to read and sign when they're already mentally taxed. I guess I'm wondering, is it possible to give them too much?
absolutely. I've had that happen before. I used to use a platform that wasn't very patient friendly, but I loved it. And for them to have to download an app, then they get the app, then it's on the phone, and you have to use, and it works better on Apple than it did on other things. So yeah, it is too much. And I will say, and I know a lot of lactation people, like, they won't even have a visit if they don't have their intake forms or the consent. I do all that in person. I don't even, I don't, I do it all in person when I get there. And I'll just tell them, I was like, we're going to tack on about 10 minutes to your visit. And that's just for me. And I eat that cost, right? But it helps if it alleviates something and they're better able to absorb the information that I'm giving them, because they're not worried about, I didn't get the form or all these things. Or I do it when I'm in person, and I may ask the question a different way than it is presented, and they may give me a more robust answer. So I do eat that cost, but it does help me provide. I feel like it helps me provide better care because I have a relaxed, a less stressed parent that I'm working with. So you have to do what works best for you and what you're seeing. If you're seeing that in your practice, you can adapt, you can pivot, you can do whatever it takes to provide the best care that you can.
I'll say I just learned something new about your practice, Nikki. I thought for sure that you sent the forms ahead of time. So I learned something new.
I
I
tried. I tried.
Yeah, yeah.
It didn't
Okay,
work.
there maybe was a point that you told me that. Yeah, I
Hmm.
I've done a little bit of both, but because I do the handwritten ones, typically I like to fill them out myself in person. For me, and some of you may agree, it gives me the opportunity to look them in the eyes, and also while I'm writing and engaging and talking with them, I'm seeing how they're interacting with baby and getting some mental notes about how they are engaging in order to slightly assess. I'm no psychologist,
Hmm.
but I am assessing whether or not that they're having healthy eye contact, whether they're engaging with baby in a way that feels right, that feels like they are in tune to baby's needs. Or if birthing parent is having a little trouble connecting. And I can see some of that while I'm just asking these questions and getting them kind of warmed up, maybe having a little tea, getting real
Hmm.
comfortable in the space with them, and trying to really relate and connect in a way that will pull down some walls and get them to share throughout the rest of the consult. So you may be able to utilize that time in person and they won't feel like it was a bother at all because, as Nikki says, you won't have sent them pre-work. Um, and you won't have put them through a lot of extra steps in order to get the care they so desperately need. All right, more questions. Yeah, all right, okay, y'all came in under the wire.
Um, back, do we have any resource for the use of the medical terminology in the EHR? Some terms I don't know, but I come across new ones when working with Pete. So I will have to add. I didn't ask her ahead of time if I could share this stuff.
Nikki, I'm sorry, not Nikki. Angela, can you keep me honest on if LER has medical terminology that may be helpful? I believe there's a course.
We do have a course in medical
Yeah.
terminology. It's a simple one. It's part of the, it's one of those requirements that IBLC has. Also, from the medical terminology, I think it's helpful if, you get some of those abbreviations and then, search online or ask a healthcare provider. It's one of those things where you can sort of smile and nod, and then, look it up later so that then you can learn.
And then
Yeah,
it's a whole other, oh, sorry, go ahead.
no, I was
Coding
gonna
is
say
a
in
whole
some of
nother
those.
beast. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I don't even try. No, that's not my ministry. But in some of the trials that you have of these lactation specific platforms, in there you can have a look at what you think, what is there, like what do they have, what are some options that are included in the visit, and a lot of times there's a little button in, like help, explain more, like what does that mean, and you can go into those spaces and create forms from that. He's like, I don't really want all of this stuff that comes along with this EMR. What do they have available? Like, what can I pull from this to create my own situation? So I think that could be another way as well.
I agree. To expound on what Angela was saying, the person who asked the question about terminology was the CBS. If you decide to matriculate forward to IBCLC, medical terminology is a required course to sit the exam. So you'd have to take that then. But it's an open course that you're welcome to take now if you want to get a little bit more of that under your belt in preparation for just setting yourself up to be better prepared to speak the language of other clinicians in this work.
Absolutely. Yep.
All right, now I think that's it. Is that it, y'all? Let us know. This has been fun. It's, documentation can sometimes make our eyes glass over. We don't want that for you. We don't want that for the families you're taking care of. So we encourage you to have fun with it. We encourage you to be flexible with it as long as you're sticking by the guidelines and making sure that you keep the information secure for your purposes and for the family's protection as well. You can do it a number of different ways. Do what makes sense. And we didn't even really get into care plans and what you send away with the family and making sure that they can clearly understand what you are telling them to do. And that may be a whole nother talk later. We'll keep that in mind, Nikki, because we touched on care plans a bit here and there. People often put it in with documentation, but it really can be a whole separate conversation about how you capture the information, how you communicate as you're ending the consult, what you give the family, and what you communicate back and forth to them after the fact as well, to make sure they fully understand what it is that you've given them to do. And that may help you in the end not have to pull up any documentation and defend what you told them to do if you're clear in your care plan. So we'll talk about that another time. For now, the next time you'll see us is when?
It
August.
is August 4th.
August 4th. August 4th is during World Breastfeeding Week. So of course we're talking about World Breastfeeding Week. And the theme this year is protecting breastfeeding. We're going to talk about what that means. What does that look like? Who's protecting it from what? And why do we need to protect it? And we'll go, we'll get, we don't know any other way. Quick and dirty. We'll give it to you straight. We'll talk to you about how you're celebrating. We want to know what you're planning to do. You can absolutely chime in the chat that week and tell us about how folks can find you celebrating World Breastfeeding Week around the world. We look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you.
All right, all set. All right, until then, y'all stay safe. Y'all stay sanitized, please. And to the best of your ability, stay sane. I don't have to make any promises there. We'll see you next
All right,
time.
so enjoy your day.